By phone, one of the lead reporters on this, EastIdahoNews.com reporter Eric Grossarth. Also joining us, Steve Hassan. He's a cult expert and author of the book Combating Cult Mind Control. And guys, we're going to listen, and you as our viewers as well. For the first time, you're going to hear Lori Vallow Daybell in her own words. She's on a podcast, and this was obtained by East Idaho News. This is a Time to Warrior Up podcast. It's people talking on the podcast about preparing for the end times, Jesus' second coming. And Lori herself, she believes she is a gatherer, that she is really on a mission from God to get the 144,000 ready. So again, this is Lori Vallow Daybell in her own words.
We're gathering together as saints, as brothers and sisters, and preparing for the second coming of Christ. We want to be there together, and we want to be there strong together. And we appreciate Jason and his warrior ethos because it applies to everybody in their life. You know, we're mothers with lots of children. We're sisters, we're aunts, we're daughters, we're friends. So it applies to everybody.
All right, again, that podcast, Time to Warrior Up, preparing people for the second coming. Eric, I'll start with you. As you've listened to that podcast, what else can you tell us? Is there anything in there that is frightening to you as you listen?
You know, on the surface, these seem like normal Christian beliefs. They talk about how they need to be ready for the second coming of Jesus Christ, that they need to teach other people, help them have a further understanding of teachings of Jesus Christ. And so on the surface, again, you don't see too much, but they produced dozens of these podcasts. And later, Chad Daybell comes on to one of these podcasts as well. And he is telling about his near-death experiences. And so that's where the two first talked publicly.
Yep. She reads his books, 25 of them, on this end of days ideology, and then they actually meet doing these podcasts. Steve, what's your take on Lori's assertion that she is a gatherer, like she has a special revelation from God and a special mission from God?
So all the information I have is public sourced, but it sounded from her ex-husband like she had a radical personality change. It sounded from Tylee's aunt like she became obsessed with Doomsday and the end times. And so in my work of over 40 years with people in mind control cults, this sounds like a classic undue influence or mind control situation where you have the deadly combination of someone who claims to be a prophet, who's communicating with the dead, who's saying that his fiction books are actually all true, and his influence over this mother of two who is not acting like a mother. She's like numb, and it seems like she's just buying into this belief that because these are the last days, it doesn't matter. And apparently from the aunt, she had actually said, I'm thinking about driving my car over a cliff with my kids in it, which bodes very poorly in thinking whether the children are alive or not.
Yeah, and Eric, as we talk about this thinking and theology, ideology of the end of days, Chad Daybell's 25 books, he does claim in there he's had near-death experiences, and I think one line in there, correct me if I'm wrong, is he has 1 foot in the spirit world. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's kind of what he talks about. There's one instance in one of his autobiographies he talks about where he was cliff diving in California and had this kind of 1 foot into the spirit world, 1 foot out, was able to see other people on the other side, and he was communicating with them. And it is these people that would tell him things that he needed to do for his family, but also now it seems that he wanted to share those in his autobiography.
Got it. Steve, from your experience, any of this frightening to you?
Oh, it's all frightening to me, and the fact that there are so many people prepping with bunkers, with food for the last days. And as I was mentioning before, this notion that people have direct revelations from the divine, it reminds me of Elizabeth Smart's kidnapper, who had a revelation she should be his second wife. There are many of these micro cults where it seems to be a one-on-one situation. Now, there may be a cult where there are many other true believers in him as a prophet, but in terms of the information I've seen so far, it seems like a cult of one. And there are very suspicious deaths. When you're in that kind of mindset, you're not thinking, I am killing someone. You're thinking everything's spiritual, everyone's going to die anyway. I'm part of the salvation, I'm part of God's army, and therefore it's all justified. So they're above the law, they're above common sense, and it's a very dangerous combination. And unfortunately, there are many people who are buying into this conspiracy, end of the world's, following live prophets mentality.
Here's another voice in on this. This is, we know that the two missing children are 7-year-old JJ and 17-year-old Tylee. Well, it's Tylee's aunt. And she is talking, basically she says at one point she was close to Lori, but then Lori changed after beginning to read these books and really delving into this in Day's thinking. So here again, this is Tylee's aunt talking about what she saw in Lori. Here's that.
I said, I think Lolo may be a sociopath. I'm not in the habit of just randomly calling people sociopaths. I felt like from the beginning, the chances of these kids being found alive were, most likely pretty remote.
We hope that's not the case, but again, you hear the concern in an aunt's voice there, and again, that is number one here, that JJ and Tylee are okay. Eric, this is one of the first times we've heard from someone really blood relative of Tylee. Again, this is her aunt speaking out. When was the last time anybody saw Tylee? We know with JJ it's about September 23rd. Is there anybody that says, oh yeah, I saw Tylee on this date?
We don't have a specific date that anybody last saw Tylee. All we know is that a neighbor said sometime in September or August they saw Tylee in the area, and police said that she went missing in September. There's no definitive date like JJ where he was seen at school on September 23rd.
Got it. Quite an assertion there, Steve, that Lori has become a sociopath. Are you seeing that in what you're hearing in all this?
So my research over all these decades, and I myself had been in a cult in the 70s, which got me interested before I became a mental health professional, is that the cult leader is actually typically a malignant narcissist. And malignant narcissists are sociopathic. They think they're above the law, and everything's about them. So if you become under their control, then you become like them. It's like a cloning of an identity. So they can engage in all kinds of antisocial acts.
I want to harken back to the divorce documents. And again, we are daily trying to keep this clear for you, our viewers, and connect the dots, because there's so much concerning things going on. Not only 2 missing children, but 3 deaths around Lori and Chad, people really close to them, i.e. their spouses. So I'm going to talk about the death of Lori's former husband, her 4th husband, Charles Vallow. He was shot and killed by her brother, Alex. This is in July. But before that, Charles was going to file for divorce. And here are some of his assertions in the divorce documents about Lori's mindset and what it was concerning him. And even he felt threatened. Here's that.
Lori informed Charles that she was a god assigned to carry out the work of the 144,000 at Christ's second coming in July 2020, and that if Charles got in her way of her mission, she would murder him. Lori proceeded to warn Charles that she would kill him upon his return home and had an angel there to help her dispose of the body. She also mentioned that she could not trust Charles and that she would not only kill him, but would destroy him financially.
Steve, that's what you're talking about, right? That this is a different mindset. This is a mission from God, and either you're in or you're in the way.
Yeah, and there was no evidence that she was sociopathic or had any problems in the relationship until she started listening and reading these books. And again, I want to just remind your listeners about Jim Jones telling parents to kill their own children drinking a cyanide-laced flavor aid. We have many cases of mind controllers saying that they're Jesus, saying they're the Messiah, ordering people to do things they would never in a million years do if they hadn't been in the cult.
Yeah, and I just want to remind our viewers that we're not trying to convict anyone, but we are just going on what we have, and that is 2 children are missing, and a mom who's, according to police, knows something, but it's not helping in an investigation, and also going by divorce documents, assertions in court documents of what her mindset was and how it could impact not only the missing kids, but deaths around Lori Vallow Daybell and her new husband, Chad Daybell. Here's one more a set of assertions from these divorce documents. Again, this is now the late 4th husband, Charles, talking about what is Lori saying and doing that's concerning him at the time. Here's that as read by one of our producers.
Lori has recently become infatuated and at times obsessive about near-death experiences and spiritual visions. Lori has told Charles that she is sealed, eternally married, to the ancient Book of Mormon prophet Moroni, and that she has lived numerous lives on numerous planets prior to this current life.
Eric, before we get Steve's take on this, anything else that was going? What do we know about Lori's history? We know 5 husbands. We know a daughter in Tylee, a son in Colby, an adopted son, JJ. Anything else in her background that you can add?
You know, we know that there was earlier concern, like as far back as 2007, about her mental state, even to the point that a judge ordered cameras be placed in her house to monitor the situation. And she seemed to, according to a former wife of Charles Vallow, be infatuated with the self-centeredness and the excitement of these child custody proceedings. And so sometimes some of these things may have come to light a little bit earlier than the last couple of years.
Steve, a final thought here as we go over some of these either assertions in court documents or some of what's going on now. She and her new husband living it up in Hawaii.
Yeah, so I just want to validate what you were saying, is this is all speculation based on the evidence or the information that we have at the moment. We need forensic evidence. We need real interviews with real witnesses and et cetera. However, I do want to just say undue influence exists. People can be hypnotized. They can be subjected to sleep deprivation, privacy deprivation, isolation, phobia indoctrination, things that disrupt their sense of self and create a new identity. And if that is the case, that she was basically functional and a good human being prior to being exposed to this teachings, and then he married her, by the way, so that's kind of suspicious also. But anyway, the key point that I want to convey to people is that this mindset of the ends of the world is coming, and therefore all normal common sense and rule of law is off, and you have to follow somebody who claims to be a prophet who has connections with the spirit world. Be very careful. This is very dangerous.
Yeah, no, you mentioned it, and again, that it's being investigated. The death of Chad Daybell's wife in October, and less than 3 weeks later, he marries Lori. Certainly, that brings up some questions. Steve, good to talk to you. Thanks so much. Eric, you as well. And we're going to delve